My daughter called me at 3 in the morning. The phone rang, cutting through the silence of my cabin like a gunshot. I fumbled for it in the dark, my heart already hammering against my ribs, because no good news ever travels at that hour. I answered, expecting a wrong number, but what I heard froze the blood in my veins. "Dad, please come get me." Her voice was a broken whisper, trembling so hard the words barely held together. Before I could ask what was wrong, before I could ask where she was in the house, she added 5 words that haunt me to this second. "Don't let him kill me." Then the line went dead. I didn't call the police. I didn't call for an ambulance. I put on my boots. I grabbed my keys. And I drove. When I arrived at the sprawling estate where my daughter lived with her husband and his wealthy family, the lights were on, but the house was silent as a grave. I pounded on the massive oak door. It opened, but not to my daughter. Her mother-in-law, Patricia, stood there in a silk robe, blocking my path with a look of pure disdain. She told me Sarah was sleeping. She told me Sarah was having an episode. She told me I was trespassing. She did not move. So I moved her. I put my shoulder into the wood and shattered the lock, storming past her screams. I found Sarah in the guest bathroom, locked from the inside. When I kicked that door open, I saw my little girl curled in the fetal position on the cold tile floor. Her face was swollen. Her arm was bent at an angle that made my stomach turn. She was unconscious. I fell to my knees, checking for a pulse, my hands shaking for the first time in 40 years. That is when I heard the laugh. I looked up to see Justin, her husband, standing in the doorway, swirling a glass of scotch. He looked at my dying daughter, then looked at me with a smirk and said, "Took you long enough, old man. Get this trash out of my house before the carpet gets stained." 10 minutes later was the one in handcuffs. As the police shoved me into the back of the cruiser, charged with breaking and entering and assault, I watched through the window. Justin was talking to the officers, shaking their hands, playing the victim. He looked at me and winked. He thought he had won. He thought I was just a retired mechanic with a shallow bank account and a bad temper. He thought this was the end of the story. He had no idea that he had just declared war on the wrong man. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to burn the world down to protect the ones you love. The drive to their estate usually takes 40 minutes. I made it in 20. The snow was coming down hard, a white curtain trying to bury the world, but I could not feel the cold. The heater in my 1990 Ford pickup was rattling, blowing lukewarm air against the frosted windshield, but my hands were sweating. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, the leather creaking under the pressure. Every mile marker that flashed by was a reminder of my failure. I should have seen this coming. A father is supposed to know. I replayed the last time I saw Sarah. It was Christmas 3 weeks ago. She had come to the cabin alone. She was wearing a turtleneck sweater even though the fire was roaring and the room was sweltering. She was jumpy. Every time her phone buzzed, she flinched like she had been burned. I asked her if everything was okay. I asked her if Justin was treating her right. She smiled that practiced brittle smile that didn't reach her eyes and told me everything was perfect. She told me Justin was just stressed with the business. She told me I wouldn't understand the pressure of high finance. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. I believed her because I thought I had raised a fighter who would never let a man lay a hand on her. I was wrong. The wiper blades slapped against the glass, a rhythmic metronome counting down the seconds. I pushed the gas pedal to the floor. The old engine roared, protesting the abuse, the tires fighting for traction on the black ice. I didn't care if the truck fell apart. I didn't care if I slid off the road. The only thing that mattered was the terror in her voice. "Don't let him kill me." That sentence looped in my head. It wasn't a figure of speech. Sarah doesn't exaggerate. She is a data analyst. She deals in facts. If she said he was going to kill her, she meant he was currently in the process of ending her life. I felt a surge of rage so potent it tasted like copper in my mouth. I had spent my life building a fortress of anonymity. I had buried my past. I had buried the man I used to be in the Marines. I became Bill the mechanic, the quiet guy who fixes transmissions and fishes on Sundays. I did it to give her a normal life. I did it so she wouldn't have to carry the weight of my shadow. But tonight, Bill the mechanic died on Route 94. The man driving this truck now was someone else entirely. I saw the iron gates of the Vanderwood estate looming in the headlights. They were closed. A keypad with a red light blinked mockingly at me. I didn't slow down. I didn't look for the code she had given me years ago. I shifted into low gear and aimed for the center seam. The truck shuddered violently as the bumper connected with the wrought iron. Metal screeched against metal, sparks flying into the snow, and then the lock gave way. The gates swung open, bent and defeated. I didn't stop to check the damage to my truck. I roared up the long, perfectly shoveled driveway, the high beams cutting through the darkness, illuminating the massive colonial mansion that stood like a monument to their ego. I slammed the truck into park right on the pristine front lawn, the tires tearing up the dormant grass. I jumped out, ignoring the biting wind, ignoring the ache in my bad knee. I ran to the front door. I didn't ring the bell. I hammered on the wood with my fist, putting all my weight behind it. Open the door, open the damn door, or I will take it off the hinges. The porch light flicked on, blinding me for a second. The door opened inward. Patricia stood there, Sarah's mother-in-law. She looked like she had stepped out of a catalog for people who have never worked a day in their lives. Her silk robe was impeccable. Her hair was perfectly coiffed, even at 3 in the morning. She looked at me not with fear, but with annoyance. She looked at my grease-stained jacket, my worn-out boots, the snow melting in my gray hair. She curled her lip. "You are causing a scene, William." Her voice was calm, condescending, the way one speaks to a disobedient dog. "The neighbors will hear. Move your truck off the grass immediately." "Where is she?" My voice was a low growl. I tried to step inside, but she stepped into the doorway, blocking me. She was a small woman, but she held herself with the entitlement of someone who believes laws don't apply to them. "She is indisposed." Patricia crossed her arms. She had another one of her episodes, screaming, throwing things. Justin is trying to calm her down. "Honestly, William, you should be ashamed. You raised a hysterical, unstable girl who can't handle the responsibilities of this family." "We called the doctor. He gave her a sedative. She is sleeping. Now go home before I call security." She was lying. I could see it in the tightness of her jaw. I could smell the alcohol on her breath, expensive wine masking the scent of fear. "Get out of my way, Patricia." "Or what?" She raised an eyebrow. "You will hit a woman. That is all people like you know, isn't it? Violence. Go back to your shack, William. Sarah doesn't want to see you. She is embarrassed by you. She told us tonight. She said she wished she had a father who was somebody, instead of a nobody who fixes cars." That sting hit its mark, but I didn't flinch. I looked her dead in the eye. I didn't see a mother-in-law. I saw a gatekeeper. I saw an enemy combatant. I am going to count to 3. 1. Patricia laughed. A cold, sharp sound. "You are ridiculous." 2. I shifted my weight, bracing my shoulder. "If you take one step further, I will have you arrested for home invasion. Do you know who my husband was? Do you know who my son is? We will bury you, William. We will take your little pension and your little cabin and leave you with nothing." 3. I didn't swing. I didn't push with my hands. I dropped my shoulder and drove forward like a battering ram. I hit the door just as she tried to slam it shut. The wood splintered around the lock with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. The door flew open, hitting the wall with a deafening crash. Patricia stumbled back, falling onto the polished marble floor of the foyer. She screamed a high-pitched shriek of outrage, not pain. "My antique door! You animal! You broke the door!" I didn't look at her. I stepped over her legs. The house was warm, smelling of lavender and old money. I scanned the hallway. The stairs were to the left. Sarah's room was on the second floor, the second door on the right. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my boots leaving muddy, snowy footprints on the white carpet. "Sarah." I shouted her name. The silence of the house was gone now, replaced by Patricia's screaming from downstairs and the sound of heavy footsteps running towards me from the hallway. A security guard, a private hire, rounded the corner. He was big young, probably ex-football. He saw me and reached for his belt. "Sir, stop right there." I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. When he reached for me, I didn't fight him. I just kept moving with a momentum he wasn't expecting. I stiff-armed him in the chest, catching him off balance. He slipped on the carpet and went down hard. I wasn't there to fight the help. I was there for my daughter. I reached the master bedroom. Empty. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled. A lamp was knocked over. A glass vase lay shattered on the floor. Signs of a struggle. My heart stopped. "Sarah." I heard a faint whimper. It came from the bathroom. The door was closed. I tried the handle. Locked. "Dad." The voice was so weak I almost missed it. "Dad, help. Stand back, baby. Stand back from the door." I took a breath. I focused all my panic, all my rage into my right leg. I kicked the door right below the handle. The frame gave way instantly. The bathroom was white. Pristine white marble, which made the blood look so much brighter. Sarah was on the floor, wedged between the toilet and the bathtub. She was wearing her silk pajamas, the ones I gave her for her birthday. The top was torn. There was blood on the sink, blood on the towel. But the worst was her face. Her left eye was swollen shut, turning a sickening shade of purple. Her lip was split, and her arm. Her left arm was bent in a way an arm should never be bent. I fell to my knees. The water from the melted snow on my coat dripped onto her face. She tried to open her good eye. She tried to smile. "You came," she whispered. "You really came. I'm here, baby. I'm here." I gently touched her hair, terrified to touch anywhere else. I pulled off my heavy coat and wrapped it around her. She was shivering violently. Who did this? But I knew. I didn't need her to answer. "Well, look at this touching reunion." The voice came from behind me. I froze. I slowly turned my head. Justin was leaning against the doorframe of the bathroom. He was wearing a cashmere sweater and holding a tumbler of amber liquid. He looked bored. He looked annoyed. There was not a single ounce of remorse on his handsome, privileged face. "She really is a drama queen, Bill." Justin took a sip of his drink. She tripped. Clumsy. I told her to watch where she was walking. "But you know, Sarah, always looking for attention." I stood up. My knees cracked. I stood up to my full height. I am 6'2", but in that moment I felt 10 feet tall. I looked at the man my daughter had married, the man who had promised to protect her, the man who had stood at the altar and looked me in the eye and swore he would cherish her. "She has a broken arm, Justin." My voice was quiet. Deadly quiet. "She fell," he shrugged, and then she started screaming like a banshee. "Woke up my mother. Unacceptable behavior. Honestly, you can take her. I'm done with it for tonight. Let her cool off in your little shack. Maybe she will learn some gratitude." He stepped aside, gesturing for me to leave. "Take her. But leave the diamond earrings. And the phone." I paid for those. The rage was a physical thing now. It was a red haze clouding my vision. I wanted to reach out and snap his neck, I knew how to do it. It would take 3 seconds. I could crush his windpipe before he dropped his glass. The urge was so strong, my hands twitched. But then I heard Sarah moan. "Dad, please. Let's just go, please." She was right. If I killed him now, I would go to prison for life. Sarah would be alone. I had to get her to a hospital. I had to make sure she survived the night. The war could wait. The battle was now. I turned my back on him. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. I bent down and scooped Sarah up into my arms. She was so light, too light. Had he been starving her too? The thought added another layer of fuel to the fire burning in my gut. I carried her out of the bathroom. Justin didn't move. I had to turn sideways to squeeze past him in the doorway. He didn't step back. He stood his ground, forcing me to brush against him. "Don't bring her back until she learns how to behave," he whispered. I stopped. I looked him in the eyes. I memorized the color of them. I memorized the shape of his nose. I memorized the smell of his expensive cologne mixed with the sweat of a coward. "You better pray, Justin." He laughed. "Pray for what?" "Pray that I am just a mechanic." I walked away. I carried my daughter down the stairs. Patricia was still in the foyer on her phone. She saw us and gasped. "You are kidnapping her. I am telling the police you are kidnapping her. Put her down." I walked out the front door into the biting wind. The snow was falling harder now. I laid Sarah gently across the bench seat of my truck. I buckled her in. I kissed her forehead. "Hang on, baby. We are going to get you help." I ran around to the driver's side. But before I could open the door, blue and red lights flooded the driveway. 2 police cruisers screeched to a halt, blocking my exit. Officers spilled out, guns drawn. "Get on the ground. Put your hands where I can see them. Now." I looked at the house. Justin and Patricia were standing on the porch, wrapped in blankets, pointing at me. Patricia was crying a fake theatrical sob. "That's him, officers. That's the maniac. He broke down our door. He assaulted me. He is trying to abduct my daughter-in-law." I raised my hands slowly. I looked at the police. "My daughter is injured in the truck. She needs a hospital. Get on the ground." The officer didn't listen. He didn't care. To him, I was just a violent intruder in a wealthy neighborhood. I was the threat. I slowly lowered myself to the snow. The cold seeped through my jeans instantly. A knee pressed into my back. Cold metal cuffs clicked around my wrists. "You are under arrest for breaking and entering assault and attempted kidnapping." They hauled me up. As they shoved me toward the cruiser, I looked back at the porch. Justin raised his glass in a mock toast. He mouthed the word. "Goodbye." I didn't struggle. I didn't scream. I sat in the back of the police car and watched the paramedics carefully take Sarah out of my truck and put her into the ambulance. At least she was safe. That was all that mattered for tonight. But as the police car pulled away, leaving the mansion behind, I closed my eyes. I wasn't praying. I was planning. They thought they had neutralized the threat. They thought putting Bill the mechanic in a cell would solve their problem. They didn't know about the satellite phone hidden under the seat of my truck. They didn't know about the offshore accounts. They didn't know that the name Bill O'Connor meant something very different in the world of global logistics than it did in their country club. Justin wanted a war. He wanted to crush the little guy. He was about to find out that the little guy owned the ground he stood on. The silent tycoon was no longer silent, and his wrath was going to be biblical. They held me at the precinct for 4 hours. 4 hours of sitting on a metal bench bolted to the floor, listening to the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of phones ringing. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't call a friend. I just sat there, staring at the concrete wall, my mind replaying the image of Sarah's broken arm over and over again. When they finally processed my paperwork and released me on my own recognizance pending a court date, the sun was just beginning to rise. The sergeant at the desk, a man with tired eyes, who looked like he had seen too much domestic drama, handed me my belongings in a plastic bag. He told me to go home. He told me to cool off. He told me that family disputes get messy, and I should stay away until things settled down. I nodded, took my keys, and walked out into the freezing morning air. I didn't go home. I drove straight to Mercy General Hospital. The emergency room waiting area was a sea of misery filled with coughing children and people nursing minor injuries, but the air shifted when I walked toward the trauma unit. It was sterile, smelling of antiseptic and floor wax, a smell that always reminded me of loss. I approached the nurse's station, my hands still smelling like the metallic taint of the handcuffs. I asked for Sarah O'Connor. The nurse, a young woman with compassionate eyes, typed the name into her computer. Her face softened. She started to give me a room number, but then she hesitated. Her fingers stopped over the keyboard. She looked up at me, then looked over my shoulder. Her demeanor changed instantly from helpful to guarded. "I am sorry, sir," she said, her voice dropping a decibel. "I cannot give you any information on that patient." I felt the muscle in my jaw tighten. "I am her father. I brought her in. I need to see her." "I understand that," she said, avoiding my gaze, "but the patient's husband has arrived. He has provided documentation designating him as her primary next of kin and medical proxy. He has strictly requested that no visitors be allowed, specifically you." The world tilted on its axis. Medical proxy. The words tasted like ash. I looked past the nurse down the long, bright hallway, and there he was. Justin. He wasn't in a jail cell where he belonged. He was standing outside room 304 speaking to a doctor. He had changed his clothes. The cashmere sweater was gone, replaced by a wrinkled button-down shirt that made him look disheveled, worried, the perfect picture of a distraught husband. He was nodding earnestly, running a hand through his hair, playing the role of the victimized spouse to perfection. I didn't think. I moved. I bypassed the nurse's station and strode down the hall. My boots squeaked on the linoleum, a heavy rhythmic sound that announced my arrival. Justin looked up. For a second, just a fraction of a second, I saw the fear flicker in his eyes. But he extinguished it instantly, replaced by that same arrogant, untouchable smirk he had worn on his front porch. He didn't step back. He stepped forward to meet me, positioning himself between me and the door to my daughter's room. "Get away from that door, Justin." My voice was low, a rumble deep in my chest. "Security," Justin called out, not loudly, but with the authoritative tone of a man used to being obeyed. He didn't even look at me when he said it. He looked at the doctor standing next to him. "Dr. Evans, this is the man I told you about. The one who broke into our home. The one who caused all this." The doctor, a tall man with graying hair and a weary expression, stepped in front of Justin. He held up a hand, a barrier of white coat and authority. "Sir, you need to leave. Now, or I will have you removed." "She is my daughter," I said, pointing at the closed door. "He is the one who put her in there. Ask her. Just go in there and ask her who did this." The doctor sighed, adjusting his glasses. "We have spoken to the patient. She is sedated and confused. Her husband states she has a history of self-harm and hysteria. Given the legal paperwork he has provided, he has the right to determine her visitors. You are upsetting the staff and other patients. Please walk away." I looked at the door. I could be 10 feet away from her, but I might as well have been on the moon. The law, the glorious American legal system, was not a shield for the weak. It was a weapon for those who knew how to twist it. Justin knew the loopholes. He knew that as her husband, he owned her medical rights until a court said otherwise. He knew that a frantic father looking for his battered daughter looked a lot like a crazy old man to an overworked doctor. Justin leaned in close, his voice a whisper only I could hear. "Go home, Bill. She doesn't want you. She signed the papers. She knows who takes care of her. You have nothing to offer her but grease stains and a truck that barely runs." I was about to grab him. I was about to tear that facade off his face right there in the hallway, consequences be damned. But then I saw the elevator doors open at the end of the hall. 2 uniformed officers stepped out. Not the beat cops from the night before. These were county deputies. And walking between them, looking like a grieving queen in a funeral procession, was Patricia. She had changed too. She wore a modest black coat and flats, no jewelry. Her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, making her look older, frailer. She spotted me and let out a theatrical gasp, clutching the arm of the deputy on her left. "Oh my God, he is here!" she cried out, her voice trembling. "Officer, please, I told you, he would come here to finish what he started." The deputies moved fast. One of them a man with a buzz cut and a name tag that read, Miller put a hand on his holster. Not drawing the weapon, but warning me. "William O'Connor," he barked. "Step away from Mr. Vanderwood." I didn't move. I looked at Miller. I knew his father. We used to bowl together 20 years ago. But Miller didn't see a friend. He saw a suspect. Bill Miller said, his voice hard. "We have a judge's order here. Temporary restraining order. You are to stay 500 feet away from Sarah Vanderwood, Justin Vanderwood, and Patricia Vanderwood. Effective immediately." He pulled a folded yellow paper from his pocket and shoved it against my chest. I didn't take it. It fell to the floor, landing on the sterile white tile like a stain. "You have got to be kidding me," I said, looking from Miller to Patricia. She blocked the door. "He beat my daughter unconscious. And you are serving me papers." The judge signed it based on the affidavit provided by Mrs. Vanderwood regarding your violent entry last night and your history of alcohol-induced aggression, Miller recited robotically. "If you violate this order, you will be arrested and held without bail. Do you understand history of alcohol-induced aggression?" The lie was so bold, so calculated, it took my breath away. I hadn't touched a drop of liquor since Sarah was born. But that didn't matter. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was who told the story first and who told it with the most expensive lawyer standing next to them. Patricia had made the calls. She had used her late husband's connections. She had painted a picture of a deranged blue-collar father obsessed with ruining her son's perfect life. And the system had bought it, hook, line, and sinker. Patricia looked at me from behind the safety of the badges. Her frailty vanished for a split second, replaced by a cold, triumphant glare. She adjusted her coat, a subtle gesture that said, "Know your place." I looked at the closed door of room 3041 last time. I imagined Sarah waking up in the dark, pain radiating from her arm, looking for me and seeing only the faces of the monsters who put her there. The thought was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that nearly doubled me over. But I knew that if I fought now, if I resisted arrest in this hospital, I would be locked away for years. And then Sarah would truly be alone. I looked at Justin. He was smiling again. A small, tight smile. He thought this was checkmate. I bent down and picked up the yellow paper. My hands were steady. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. 500 feet, I said to Miller. "That is right," Miller said, puffing out his chest. "Start walking." I turned around. I walked past Patricia without blinking. I walked past the nurses' station where the staff watched me with a mixture of fear and pity. I walked out of the double doors of the emergency room and into the parking lot. The sun was fully up now, blindingly bright on the snow. I sat in my truck. I didn't start the engine. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They thought they had built a wall. They thought a piece of paper and a corrupt narrative could stop a father. They were wrong. The law protected them because the law was designed for people who played by the rules. But I wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. I was going to change the game entirely. I reached under the passenger seat and pulled out a burner phone. I dialed a number I hadn't used in a decade. It rang twice. "This is Joe," a voice answered. Rough and alert. "Joe, it's Bill." There was a pause. Then the tone shifted from professional to respectful. "It has been a long time, boss. I need you to wake up the team," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I need a full forensic audit on the Vanderwood family. Every bank account, every shell company, every unpaid parking ticket. And Joe, yeah, boss, find out who holds the mortgage on their estate. And find out how much it would cost to buy it. Today." I hung up. I looked back at the hospital window. I couldn't go in. But I could make sure that by the time Sarah walked out of those doors, the ground beneath Justin and Patricia's feet would no longer belong to them. They wanted to use the system to crush me. Fine. I was about to show them that I didn't just know the system. I owned the people who built it. The automatic doors of Mercy General slid shut behind me with a pneumatic hiss that sounded like a final judgment. The warmth of the hospital lobby vanished instantly, replaced by the biting wind of a Chicago winter morning. It was 10 degrees below zero, but the cold I felt had nothing to do with the weather. It was a hollowness in my chest, a void where my heart used to be before the legal system reached inside and tore it out. I stood there on the curb, watching the steam rise from the exhaust pipes of passing ambulances. People walked by me, huddled in their coats, eyes downcast, oblivious to the old man standing like a statue in the snow. To them, I was just another tragedy in a city full of them. Just a grandfather in a worn-out Carhartt jacket defeated by the machinery of the world. And in a way, they were right. The man they saw, Bill the mechanic, was defeated. He had played by the rules. He had respected the law. And the law had handed him a restraining order and kicked him to the curb while a predator sat by his daughter's bedside. I reached into my pocket and touched the folded yellow paper. 500 feet. That was the price of admission to my daughter's life. That was the wall they had built. I looked back at the hospital, counting the windows up to the 3rd floor. I didn't know which one was hers, but I could feel her presence. I could feel her pain radiating through the brick and glass. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run back in there and tear that building apart, brick by brick, until I found her. But I knew that was exactly what they wanted. They wanted the angry, unstable old man to make a scene. They wanted footage for the evening news. My phone vibrated against my hip. A single short buzz. I pulled it out. My hands were red and raw from the cold, but I didn't put my gloves on. The screen was cracked from where I had dropped it during the arrest last night. A text message notification lit up the glass. The name on the screen made the bile rise in my throat. Justin. I swiped the screen. The message was short, cruel, and undeniably Justin. "Go back to planting vegetables, old man. If you hang around, I will transfer her to a private psychiatric facility upstate. You will never find her. Go home." I stared at those glowing letters. I read them once, twice, 3 times. And then something strange happened. The shaking stopped. The trembling in my hands, the shivering in my legs, the frantic racing of my heart, it all just stopped. A profound, unnatural silence descended over my mind. It was the same silence I used to feel 40 years ago, lying in the mud of a jungle, waiting for the enemy to cross the tripwire. It was the silence of clarity. For 3 decades, I had buried that part of myself. I had buried the soldier. I had buried the ruthless tactician who built a logistics empire from a single truck. I had traded my tailored suits for flannel shirts. I had traded boardroom battles for oil changes and spark plugs. I did it for Sarah. I wanted her to grow up without the shadow of my money, without the vultures that circle great wealth. I wanted her to be loved for who she was, not for the inheritance she would one day receive. I thought I was protecting her. I looked at the text message again. Go back to planting vegetables. I let out a breath and it formed a white cloud in the freezing air. I realized then that my disguise had worked too well. I had played the role of the humble nobody so perfectly that even the rats thought they could bite me without consequence. Justin didn't fear me because he didn't know me. He saw the costume. He saw the mask. He had no idea what lay beneath. He thought he was taunting a helpless old man. He didn't know he was poking a sleeping dragon. I looked up at the gray sky. The grief was gone. The helplessness was gone. In their place was a cold, hard resolve that felt like steel in my spine. I wasn't Bill the mechanic anymore. That man died the moment the handcuffs clicked onto his wrists. I walked to my truck. My boots crunched loudly on the packed snow, a steady rhythmic march. I didn't slump my shoulders. I didn't look back. I reached the Ford, opened the door, and climbed into the freezing cab. The engine cranked over with a groan, but I didn't turn on the heat. I needed the cold. I needed it to keep me sharp. I looked at the phone one last time before tossing it onto the passenger seat. You want me to go home, Justin? I whispered to the empty cab. My voice sounded different, deeper, lacking the tremor of age. I will go home. But I am not going back to plant vegetables. I am going back to the war room. I put the truck in gear. I didn't drive recklessly. I drove with precision. I drove with purpose. As I pulled out of the hospital parking lot, leaving the scene of my humiliation behind, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. The world was about to change for the Vanderwood family. They had used the law to draw a line in the sand. They had used their money to buy a fortress. But they had forgotten the most important rule of warfare. Never underestimate an enemy you haven't properly identified. I wasn't a father going home to cry. I was a general retreating to gather his army. And when I returned, I wouldn't be bringing a wrench. I would be bringing an apocalypse. I drove toward the highway, my eyes fixed on the horizon. The time for mercy was over. The time for masquerades was done. It was time to show them exactly who Bill O'Connor really was. I reached under the passenger seat of the truck, my fingers tracing the cold metal of the floorboard, until I found the seam. It was a false bottom welded into the frame 20 years ago by a man in Berlin who asked no questions and accepted payment in gold bullion. I pulled the latch. It gave way with a heavy, satisfying click, revealing a small, velvet-lined compartment. Inside sat an Iridium satellite phone, a brick of black plastic and rubber that looked like a relic from the 90s. To anyone else, it was outdated junk. To me, it was the scepter of a kingdom I had abandoned. I pulled it out. The battery was still fully charged. I made sure of that every Sunday, a ritual of paranoia that had finally paid off. I extended the thick antenna and pressed the power button. The screen glowed a dull green, searching for a signal through the heavy snow clouds above Chicago. 1 bar. 2 bars. Connected. I didn't need to look up the number. It was burned into my memory, the only lifeline I had kept to my former life. I dialed. The sound of the connection routing through 3 different continents before landing in a high-rise office in New York was a series of digital chirps that sounded like music. It rang once. Mr. O'Connor. The voice was crisp, alert, and devoid of surprise. Joe Moretti, my personal attorney, my fixer, and the only man on earth who knew that Bill the mechanic was actually William J. O'Connor, the majority shareholder of O'Connor Global Logistics. Joe was the kind of lawyer who didn't sleep, didn't marry, and didn't lose. Joe, I said. The name felt strange on my tongue after years of silence. I am activating the protocol. There was a pause on the other end. A silence that carried the weight of 1,000 unasked questions. When Joe spoke again, his voice had shifted. The warmth was gone, replaced by the cold precision of a weapon being loaded. Is it the girl, sir? Yes, I said, looking out at the white wasteland of the parking lot. They crossed the line. They put her in the hospital, Joe. And then they used the law to keep me out. They served me with a restraining order. I heard the sound of a chair scraping against a floor, the sound of Joe standing up. I can have a team of litigators in Chicago by noon, Joe said. We will have that order quashed by dinner. I will destroy them in court, sir. Just give me the word. No, I cut him off. My voice was calm, but it terrified me. It was the voice of the man I used to be, the man who swallowed competitors whole. No courtrooms, Joe. Not yet. Courts are for people who want justice. I don't want justice. I want ruin. I watched a snowplow drive past on the main road, sparks flying as its blades scraped the asphalt. I want you to initiate Operation Shark Hunt. I heard Joe take a sharp breath. Sir, that is a scorched earth policy. If we do that, there is no going back. You will be exposing your position. The board will know you are active. The market will react. Let them react, I snapped. Here is what I need, and I need it in the next 12 hours. I gripped the phone tighter. First, I want a full forensic autopsy on the Vanderwood family. I want to know where they eat, where they sleep, and who they owe money to, especially who they owe money to. Families like that always have secrets, Joe. They have mortgages they can't afford and gambling debts they hide in shell companies. Find the rot. Done, Joe said. I am already logging into the databases. Second, I continued, my mind racing through the strategy I had formulated in the silence of the truck. I want you to find the bank that holds the note on their estate. It is a colonial mansion in Lake Forest. I want to know the outstanding balance, the interest rate, and the terms of default. And then I want you to buy the note. Buy the mortgage, sir. Yes. Use Phoenix Holdings, that shell company we set up in the Caymans for the maritime acquisitions. Keep my name off the paperwork. I want to be the one who decides if they sleep in a bed or on the street tomorrow night. I understand, Joe said, the clicking of a keyboard audible in the background. Phoenix Holdings will acquire the debt. Anything else? One more thing, I said, and this was the part that I knew would hurt the most. I need you to look into a company called Aerotech Solutions. It is a startup run by my son-in-law, Justin Vanderwood. I know it, Joe said immediately. He has been trying to get a meeting with our acquisition department for 6 months. We flagged it as a high-risk investment. The financials looked cooked. Good, I said. Uncook them. I want to know exactly how much money he has been siphoning off. I want to know if he has been using investor funds to pay for his lifestyle. If he has been stealing, I want the paper trail. I want it distinct, undeniable, and ready to be handed to the district attorney. Sir Joe's voice lowered. If we do this, if we pull these threads, the whole sweater unravels. You are talking about bankruptcy for the family and prison for the husband. This isn't just a legal maneuver. This is an execution. I looked at the hospital again. I thought about Sarah's broken arm. I thought about the fear in her voice when she called me. They executed my daughter's spirit last night, Joe. Now I am just returning the favor. Do it. And Joe. Yes, sir. Book a flight to Chicago. Private charter. Bring the paperwork. And bring a suit for me. I am done wearing this costume. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. I folded the antenna and placed the device back into the hidden compartment, locking it away. The click of the latch echoed in the cab. I sat there for a moment, letting the adrenaline settle. The decision was made. The missiles were in the air. For 10 years, Justin and Patricia had looked down on me. They had mocked my truck, my clothes, my calloused hands. They thought money was the only thing that made a person powerful. They were about to learn a very painful lesson about the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is having a lot of money in the bank. Wealth is having the power to buy the bank. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, sounding stronger than before. I wasn't just an old man in a truck anymore. I was the chairman, and the board meeting was about to begin. The waiting was the hardest part. I sat in the cab of my truck as the sun began its slow descent across the winter sky, casting long, bruised shadows over the hospital parking lot. 4 hours had passed since I hung up with Joe Moretti. 4 hours of watching people come and go through the sliding glass doors of the emergency room, wondering if my daughter was awake, wondering if she was in pain, wondering if she knew her father was just 100 yards away, barred by a piece of yellow paper and a corrupt system. I watched the steam rise from my coffee cup, staring into the black liquid, as if it could show me the future. I wasn't cold anymore. The heater was humming, but the chill inside me had nothing to do with the temperature outside. It was the cold resolve of a sniper waiting for the wind to die down before taking the shot. I checked my watch. 1 o'clock. Joe was efficient. He was meticulous. If he hadn't called yet, it was because he was digging deep. It was because he found something that required double verification. Then the satellite phone in the hidden compartment buzzed, a single angry vibration against the metal floorboard. I picked it up. The connection light was solid green. I pressed the button and held it to my ear. I didn't say hello, I just listened. Mr. O'Connor. Joe's voice was different this time. It wasn't the crisp, professional tone of a high-powered attorney. It was lower, heavier. It sounded like a man who had just looked into an open grave. Tell me, Joe, you are going to want to brace yourself, sir. I have the forensic accountant's report. We pulled everything. Credit reports, bank statements, property liens, and even the dark web data breaches. It is worse than we thought. Much worse. Go on. The Vanderwood family is not just broke Bill. They are insolvent. They are a financial corpse that just hasn't realized it's dead yet. I leaned back against the headrest, closing my eyes. I had suspected they were living beyond their means, but I had no idea of the scale. Break it down for me, Joe. The estate in Lake Forest. Joe began the rustling of papers audible over the line. It is mortgaged to the hilt, 3 liens against the property. They haven't paid the principal in 2 years, only the interest, and they are 3 months behind on that. The bank sent a notice of default last week. They are 30 days away from foreclosure. They are living in a house that technically belongs to the bank. I nodded slowly. The arrogance of Patricia at the front door made sense now. It wasn't pride. It was panic. She was terrified that if anyone looked too closely, the illusion would shatter. And Justin, I asked. That is where it gets criminal, sir. Joe paused, and I could hear him taking a sip of water. His startup, Aerotech Solutions, it is a ghost ship. No product, no contracts, no revenue. But he has raised $2 million from private investors. Doctors, dentists, friends from the country club. Where is the money, Joe? Gone. Leased Ferraris, first-class trips to the Maldives, jewelry, gambling debts. He's been using investor capital to fund their lifestyle and pay off the interest on his mother's house. It is a classic Ponzi scheme, Bill. He is robbing Peter to pay Paul, but now Peter is broke and Paul is knocking at the door with a sledgehammer. I felt a tightening in my chest. My daughter was married to a felon, a fraudster who would drag her down with him when the ship sank. But that is not the worst part, Joe said softly. What could be worse than that? We found out why they won't let Sarah leave. We found out why they drugged her and why they are fighting so hard to keep you away. It is not about love. It is not even about control. It is about the trust fund. I froze. What trust fund? Your late wife, Martha. The name hit me like a physical blow. Martha. My beautiful, kind Martha, who passed away when Sarah was just a teenager. She set up a small trust for Sarah before she died, Joe explained. It wasn't millions, but with compound interest over 15 years, it has grown. It is sitting at roughly $400,000. The terms of the trust state that the funds are released to Sarah solely upon her 30th birthday or in the event of a financial emergency verified by a spouse. My grip on the phone tightened until the plastic creaked. "Sarah turned 30 last week," I whispered. "Exactly," Joe confirmed. "The money is available. But because Sarah has been declared medically incapacitated by the doctors, Justin paid off her power of attorney falls to her husband. Justin is trying to access that money, Bill. He needs her signature or a court order deeming her incompetent to drain that account. That $400,000 is the only thing standing between him and prison. He needs it to pay off the most aggressive investors before they go to the FBI." The rage that washed over me was blinding. It wasn't just greed. It was predation. They were cannibalizing my daughter. They were breaking her body and mind to steal the last gift her mother had left her. They were using Martha's legacy to cover up their crimes. "They are not a family," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed violence. "They are parasites." "There is more," Joe said. "The bank that holds the mortgage on their mansion. It is a mid-sized regional bank. They are looking to offload the toxic asset. They want to sell the debt for 60 cents on the dollar just to get it off their books." "Buy it." "Sir," I sat up straight, opening my eyes. The hospital loomed in front of me, a fortress of white brick. "You heard me, Joe. Initiate the Phoenix Protocol. Use Phoenix Holdings to purchase the entire mortgage debt of the Vanderwood estate. Pay them cash. Do it today. Do it within the hour," Bill Joe warned. "You are buying a sinking ship. You will never see that money again." "I am not buying an investment, Joe. I am buying a gavel." I watched a doctor walk out of the emergency room entrance, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. I want to be the one holding the deed when they wake up tomorrow. I want to be the one they have to beg. And Joe purchased the debt on Justin's company, too. Find the angriest investors, the ones threatening to sue and buy their claims. I want to own every single dollar that boy owes to the world. "I understand," Joe said, his voice sharpening. He was no longer the advisor. He was the soldier receiving marching orders. "We are cornering the market on their misery." "Precisely. When the sun rises tomorrow, I don't want Justin Vanderwood to own the shirt on his back without my permission. I want Phoenix Holdings to be the air they breathe, and then I want to turn off the oxygen. I will make the calls," Joe said. "The wire transfers will be completed by close of business. By tonight, you will be the primary creditor for the entire family." "Good. And Joe?" "Yes, sir, get the jet ready. I am done sitting in this truck. I am done hiding. If they want a villain, I will show them what a villain looks like. I will show them what happens when you steal from a man who built an empire out of blood and steel." I hung up the phone. The silence returned to the cab, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with the humming energy of a machine set in motion. I looked at the yellow restraining order still sitting on the dashboard. 500 feet. They thought that piece of paper made them safe. They didn't realize that I didn't need to get close to destroy them. I could pull the ground out from under their feet from 1,000 miles away. I started the truck. The engine roared a deep guttural sound that matched the fire in my gut. I wasn't going back to the farm. I was going to the airfield. The mechanic was dead. The tycoon had returned, and he was bringing hell with him. The marble lobby of the First National Bank was designed to intimidate. It was a cathedral of capitalism, all high ceilings, echoing footsteps, and the hushed reverence of people worshiping the almighty dollar. For 30 years, Patricia Vanderwood had walked through these doors like she owned the place. Tellers would straighten their ties, managers would rush out to offer coffee, and the vault doors seemed to swing open just for her. But today the air felt different. Today the air was thin, and every breath felt like a struggle. Patricia sat in the leather chair across from Mr. Henderson's desk, her back rigid, her hands folded perfectly in her lap. She wore her best Chanel suit, the one she saved for board meetings and charity galas, the armor of a woman who had never heard the word no. Beside her, Justin was vibrating with nervous energy. He was trying to look relaxed, checking his watch, tapping his Italian loafer against the leg of the chair, but the sweat beading on his upper lip betrayed him. Mr. Henderson, the branch manager, who had kissed Patricia's ring for a decade, was not smiling. He was not offering espresso. He was staring at a computer screen with a furrowed brow, his fingers hovering over the keyboard like he was afraid to touch it. "I don't understand the delay," Robert Patricia said, her voice icy and sharp. "We simply need to roll over the interest payment. It is a formality. We have done it every quarter for 2 years. Why are we sitting here discussing it?" Henderson finally looked up. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had been given orders from so far above his head that he couldn't even see the ceiling. "It is not a formality anymore, Mrs. Vanderwood. The bank's liquidity requirements have changed. The board has flagged all high-risk accounts." "High risk," Justin scoffed, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a bark. "My mother's estate is worth $10 million. We are not high risk. We are your best clients." "The house was appraised at $10 million in 2008. Justin Henderson said quietly. "The current market value is significantly lower, and with the 3 liens you have taken out against it, the equity is non-existent." Patricia slammed her hand on the desk. The sound echoed in the small office. "How dare you? My husband played golf with the CEO of this bank. I will have your job for this insolence. Sign the extension, Robert." "Sign it now, "Can't," Henderson said. He didn't flinch, and that was when the cold terror truly began to seep into Patricia's bones. Because Robert Henderson always flinched. Why not, Justin demanded, leaning forward aggressively. "Because we don't own the note anymore." The room went dead silent. The hum of the air conditioner seemed to roar. "Excuse me," Patricia whispered. "As of 9 o'clock this morning, the First National Bank sold your mortgage debt." Henderson explained, sliding a piece of paper across the mahogany desk. "We offloaded a package of distressed assets. Your loan was included. You no longer owe the bank $300,000 in back interest. You owe the new note holder the full principal balance, $15 million. Callable immediately." Who Justin stammered, his face draining of color. "Who bought it?" "A private equity firm," Henderson said, glancing at the file. "Phoenix Holdings." Patricia stared at the name. It meant nothing to her. Just another faceless corporate entity. But the implication was clear. A bank will negotiate. A bank worries about public relations. A private equity firm is a shark that smells blood. They will foreclose. Justin said, his voice trembling. "If we don't pay the full $15 million, they will take the house." "Likely within 48 hours, Henderson confirmed. "I am sorry, Patricia, truly, but it is out of my hands. Please leave my office." The walk from the office to the parking lot felt like a funeral procession. Patricia didn't speak until they were inside Justin's silver Porsche. Then she exploded. "You told me you handled this," she screamed, turning on her son, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the leather armrest. "You said the startup money would cover the interest. You said Aerotech was about to get a government contract. It was!" Justin yelled back, slamming his hands on the steering wheel. "The deal fell through." "Okay. The investors got cold feet. It's not my fault, not your fault. You gambled away the liquidity, Justin. And now look at us. We are going to be homeless. Do you understand that the Vanderwoods on the street? The humiliation will kill me before the cold does." Justin started the car, the engine roaring to life. "I will fix it, Mom. I always fix it." "How?" Patricia hissed. "Unless you have $15 million hidden in your glove box, we are finished. That mechanic, that wretched father of hers, he is probably laughing at us right now. He brought this bad luck on us." Justin pulled out of the parking lot, driving too fast, his mind racing. He was cornered. He needed a miracle. He needed a winning lottery ticket. And then his phone rang. He ignored it. "Answer it," Patricia snapped. "It might be the lawyers." Justin looked at the screen. Unknown number. He hit the speaker button. "This is Justin Vanderwood." "Mr. Vanderwood," a voice said. Smooth, professional baritone. "This is Marcus Thorne. I represent Phoenix Holdings." Justin nearly swerved off the road. Patricia gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. We just heard about the acquisition." Justin stammered, trying to sound authoritative, but failing miserably. "Listen, we are prepared to negotiate a payment plan. My family has significant assets that are currently illiquid." "Mr. Vanderwood, please," the voice cut him off. "I am not calling about the house." Justin blinked. "You're not? No. I am calling about your company, Aerotech Solutions." Justin exchanged a confused glance with his mother. "What about it? Phoenix Holdings has been tracking your development of the new guidance software," the voice lied smoothly. "We are impressed. We believe your tech is undervalued. We are looking to expand our portfolio in the aerospace sector, and we want to acquire Aerotech." The silence in the car was heavy. Justin's heart began to pound against his ribs like a sledgehammer. Aerotech had no guidance software. It had a leased office and a few PowerPoint presentations. It was a shell, a scam he had built to fleece country club retirees. "You want to buy my company?" Justin asked, his voice cracking. "We are prepared to offer an all-cash deal," the man continued. "We want the IP, the brand, and the structure. We are willing to pay $18 million. But we need to close today. Our fiscal year ends tomorrow and we need the tax write-off. $18 million. The number hung in the air like a salvation. $15 million for the house. $3 million left over. It was a lifeline. It was a miracle. Justin tried to keep the excitement out of his voice. He tried to sound like a CEO weighing his options, not a drowning man grabbing a rope. 18 is below our valuation. Justin lied, his arrogance resurfacing instantly. "We were looking closer to 25. Justin, Patricia whispered harshly, pinching his arm. "Take the deal, we can go to 20 million, the voice on the phone said. "But that is the final offer, and we need a signature within the hour. We will wire the funds into your personal account immediately upon signing as the sole proprietor. 20 million. Justin grinned. A wide, predatory grin. He looked at his mother and winked. He thought he was the smartest man in the world. He thought he was scamming a giant corporation. He was selling them nothing. He was selling them air, and they were paying him a fortune for it. "I think we can make that work," Justin said, his voice dripping with false reluctance. "Send over the paperwork." "We will meet you at your office in 30 minutes, the voice said. "Do not be late." The line went dead. Justin screamed, a primal scream of victory. He pounded the dashboard. "Did you hear that? Did you hear that, Mom? 20 million, we are saved. We are rich." Patricia slumped back in her seat, closing her eyes, letting out a long, shuddering breath. "God loves us, Justin. God loves us. We pay off the house, we pay off the bank, and we still have 5 million to live on. We are untouchable." "They are idiots," Justin laughed, weaving through traffic. "Phoenix Holdings. What a joke. They didn't even do due diligence. They are buying a company that doesn't even have a finished prototype. I just pulled off the deal of the century. I told you," Patricia said, sitting up straighter, adjusting her pearls. "We are Vanderwoods. We always land on our feet." They drove toward the city, drunk on relief, high on their own hubris. They didn't ask why an investment firm would buy a failing startup without an audit. They didn't ask why the same company that bought their debt wanted to give them cash. They were too blinded by the glare of the gold to see the trap. Justin dialed the number for the hospital as he drove. "Who are you calling?" Patricia asked. "The private psychiatric facility." Justin said, his smile turning cruel. Now that we have the money, we don't need Sarah's trust fund anymore. But we still need to punish her, and we need to make sure her father never sees her again. I am going to have her transferred tonight. Do it, Patricia said, looking out the window at the passing city. And then buy me a drink. I need to wash the smell of that bank off my skin. They sped down the highway, believing they were racing toward their future. They had no idea they were racing toward a cliff, and the man they called a mechanic had just cut the brakes. I went back to the private airfield, but not to fly. I went to the maintenance hangar, where I kept the relics of my past life, the things I collected, not for value but for utility. In a locker at the back behind a stack of old tires, I found what I was looking for. A gray custodial jumpsuit stained with years of grease and bleach, a pair of heavy rubber-soled work boots, a cap with the logo of a generic cleaning service, and a janitor's cart fully stocked with industrial cleaner, a mop, and a yellow bucket. I stripped off the suit I had planned to wear for the board meeting. I folded the silk tie and the crisp white shirt and laid them on a workbench. I pulled on the jumpsuit. It smelled of ammonia and hard labor. It fit me loosely, hiding the set of my shoulders, making me look smaller, more hunched. I pulled the cap low over my eyes and put on a pair of thick, black-rimmed glasses that distorted my face just enough to make me unrecognizable. Finally, I grabbed a surgical mask from the first aid kit. In a hospital, a mask is a cloak of invisibility. It says you are sick, or you are afraid of getting sick, or you are just following protocol. Either way, it tells people not to look at you. I drove a beat-up service van back to Mercy General. I parked in the loading dock, flashing a fake ID badge I had printed on the drive over. The guard didn't even look at my face. He looked at the clipboard in my hand, saw a work order for a spill on the 3rd floor, and waved me through. That is the secret of the world. Nobody looks at the person cleaning the floor. We are part of the furniture. We are the background noise of existence. I pushed the cart into the service elevator. The wheels squeaked with a rhythmic, irritating sound that echoed in the empty shaft. My heart wasn't racing this time. It was beating slow and heavy like a war drum. In my pocket, I had the device. A micro camera and audio recorder no bigger than a button with a battery life of 6 hours and a direct uplink to the cloud server Joe was monitoring. The elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor. The air was different here. Heavier. It smelled of sickness and dying flowers. I kept my head down, pushing the mop bucket, moving with the slow, deliberate pace of a man paid by the hour. I passed the nurses' station. They were laughing about a TV show, drinking coffee, completely ignoring the old janitor shuffling past them. I counted the room numbers. 301, 302, 303, and then 304. The door was closed. There was no police guard anymore. Justin must have sent them away, confident that his restraining order was force-field enough to keep me out. I stopped the cart right in front of the door. I pulled out a spray bottle and a rag and began to wipe down the doorframe, moving closer and closer until I could peer through the small rectangular window. The room was dim. The only light came from the monitors blinking rhythmically by the bed. Sarah was there. She was propped up on pillows, her left arm encased in a heavy plaster cast sling suspended from a metal pole. She looked so small. Her face was pale, almost translucent bruises, standing out like dark storm clouds against white snow. Her eyes were closed. She looked like she was floating in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. I checked the hallway. Clear. I opened the door and slipped inside, pulling the cart in with me to block the view from the corridor. The room was quiet save for the hiss of oxygen and the beep of the heart monitor. I moved quickly. I didn't go to her side. I couldn't. If I touched her, if I woke her up and she saw me, she would cry out. She would blow the operation. And worse, if I held her hand, I would never be able to leave. I would barricade the door and kill anyone who tried to come in. And that would be the end of us. I moved to the bedside table. There was a large vase of lilies probably sent by Patricia to keep up appearances. Cheap flowers in an expensive vase. Perfect. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the camera. I peeled off the adhesive backing and stuck it deep into the foliage, angling the lens so it pointed directly at the bed and the chair beside it. I checked the feed on my phone. Crystal clear. Audio was live. I was about to leave when the door handle turned. I didn't have time to hide. I didn't have time to run. I turned my back to the door, grabbed the mop, and started swabbing the floor under the window, hunching my shoulders, making myself small. The door swung open. Heavy footsteps entered. A voice barked. I froze. It was him. Justin, what are you doing in here? I didn't call for housekeeping. I kept my head down, mumbling into my mask, pitching my voice higher, rougher. Spilled juice, boss. Just cleaning up, almost done. Justin didn't look at me. He looked at his watch. Hurry up. Get out. I have business to handle. I nodded, scrubbing the same spot on the floor, moving inch by inch toward the door. I could see him out of the corner of my eye. He was wearing a fresh suit, holding a leather portfolio. He looked energized, manic. He walked over to the bed and stared down at Sarah. He didn't look concerned. He looked impatient. Sarah, he said, his voice sharp. Wake up. I reached the door. I should have kept going. I should have walked out, gone to the van, and watched on the screen. But my feet wouldn't move. I parked the cart just outside the threshold, leaving the door cracked open an inch, and pretended to organize my supplies. I needed to be close. If he hurt her, if he touched her in a way that threatened her life, the plan didn't matter. I would go in there and I would end him with my bare hands. I watched through the crack. I listened through the earpiece connected to the camera. Sarah stirred. She groaned, a low sound of pain that tore through my heart. She opened her eyes, blinking against the dim light. Justin, she whispered. Her voice was raspy, dry. Water, please. Justin ignored the pitcher of water on the table. He pulled a chair close to the bed, the legs scraping loudly against the tile. We don't have time for water, Sarah. We have a situation. Sarah tried to sit up, wincing as her broken arm shifted. What happened? Where is my dad? I remember he was here. Your dad is in jail. Justin lied smoothly. He broke in. He attacked my mother. He went crazy, Sarah. The police had to take him away. He is probably going to prison for a long time. No. Sarah sobbed, tears spilling down her cheeks. He didn't. He came to help me. You were hurting me. Justin's face darkened. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a venomous hiss. Stop it. Stop with the lies. You fell in the bathroom. You slipped. We have been over this. If you keep telling people I hurt you, they are going to think you are insane. They are going to lock you up in a padded room, Sarah. Is that what you want? Do you want to be locked away where nobody can hear you scream? Sarah shrank back into the pillows, trembling. No, please. Then listen to me, Justin said, opening the leather portfolio. He pulled out a stack of documents. A pen clicked in his hand. We have a financial crisis. The bank is calling the loan on the house. Your dad's little stunt caused a lot of problems for my reputation. Investors are pulling out. We need cash, Sarah. Tonight. I don't have any money, Sarah whispered. Yes, you do, Justin said. Your mother's trust fund. The one that unlocked last week? Sarah's eyes widened. That's for emergencies. Mom said, This is an emergency, Justin shouted, slamming his hand on the mattress right next to her injured leg. Sarah cried out in pain. I gripped the handle of the mop so hard the wood splintered into my palm. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. Hold it, Bill. Hold it. Wait for the crime. Justin took a breath, composing himself. He softened his voice, a manipulative switch that was even more terrifying than his anger. Look, baby, I am sorry. I am just stressed. I am trying to save our home. I am trying to save our family. If we lose the house, we lose everything. Do you want to live on the street? Do you want to be like your father, living in a shack? I want to go home. Sarah wept. We can go home, Justin said, holding out the pen. Just sign this. It transfers the trust fund to our joint account. Once the money clears, I can pay off the mortgage and everything will be fine. I will take care of you. I promise. Sarah looked at the paper. It is all the money I have left of her, and you are using it to save her memory. Justin pressed the pen into her good hand. Do it, Sarah, or I swear to God I will have you committed. I have Dr. Evans outside right now. I can sign the papers to have you transferred to the state asylum. You know what happens in there. They tie you down. They drug you until you don't know your own name. Is that what you want? No. Sarah whimpered. Then sign. Sarah's hand shook. She couldn't hold the pen properly. She looked at the document, tears blurring her vision. I can't. It hurts to write. Justin didn't offer to help. He grabbed her hand, her good hand, and forced the pen down onto the paper. Just make a mark. Sign it. He was squeezing her fingers. I could see her knuckles turning white. I could see the panic in her eyes. This was it. This was coercion. This was extortion. This was the nail in his coffin. But it was also torture. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to kick that door open, to wrap the mop handle around his throat and squeeze until the light went out of his eyes. I imagined the sound of his ribs cracking. I imagined the look of terror on his face when he realized the janitor was the angel of death. But I froze. I forced myself to watch. If I went in now, I would stop the signature. But I would just be an angry father assaulting a husband. He would spin it. He would say I forced my way in. The evidence would be inadmissible. He would walk free. And in 6 months, he would do this again. And next time, he might actually kill her. I had to let him win this battle to win the war. I had to let him steal the money so I could send him to prison for theft. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face under the mask. I am sorry, Sarah. I am so sorry. Sarah sobbed a broken, defeated sound. She moved the pen. She scribbled her name on the dotted line. Justin snatched the paper away instantly. He checked the signature. A smile spread across his face, a look of pure, unadulterated greed. He didn't kiss her. He didn't thank her. He stood up and shoved the papers into his portfolio. Good girl, he said, patting her cheek with a condescending tap. See? That wasn't so hard. He turned to leave. He walked toward the door, whistling a low tune. I grabbed the mop bucket and pushed it hard, moving away from the door just as he swung it open. He stepped out, nearly colliding with me. Watch it, idiot, he snapped, brushing past me. I didn't look up. I let him walk away. I watched his back as he strutted down the hallway, clutching his prize. He thought he was walking toward a payday. He didn't know he was carrying his own death warrant. I waited until he turned the corner. Then I slipped back into the room. Sarah was crying softly, her head turned toward the window. I moved to the vase. I didn't retrieve the camera. I needed it to keep recording. I needed to know if anyone else came in. I walked to the side of the bed. I pulled down my mask for just a second. Sarah. She gasped, her eyes flying open. She saw me. The recognition, the relief, and then the fear that washed over her face broke me all over again. Dad, you are here. Shh. I put a finger to my lips. I am here. I never left. But the police, Justin said. Justin is a liar, I whispered, leaning close to her ear. Listen to me, baby. I saw everything. I have it all on tape. You saw, she looked ashamed. Dad, I signed it. I gave him the money. I am so sorry. I was just so scared. I know. I took her hand, her good hand, and kissed her knuckles. You did exactly the right thing. You bought us time. He took Mom's money, she sobbed. He didn't take anything, I promised her, my voice turning to steel. He just dug his own grave. Listen to me, Sarah. You have to be strong for one more night. Can you do that for me? Take me with you, she begged, gripping my sleeve. Please, Dad. Don't leave me here. I can't take you yet, I said, wiping a tear from her cheek. If I take you now, they will hunt us. They will use the law to drag you back. I have to break the cage first. I have to destroy the lock. When she asked. Tomorrow morning, I said. When the sun comes up, this nightmare ends. I promise you. No more fear. No more Justin. Just you and me. I heard footsteps in the hall. A nurse was coming. I have to go, I whispered. I pulled my mask back up. Remember, you are safe. I am watching. I am always watching. I stepped back just as the nurse walked in. She looked at me, then at the mop. Are you done in here? She asked irritably. Yes, ma'am, I mumbled. All clean. I pushed the cart out of the room. I didn't look back at Sarah. I couldn't. I walked down the long, sterile hallway, the squeak of the wheels echoing like a countdown. I made my way to the service elevator. I went down to the loading dock. I walked out into the cold night air and stripped off the jumpsuit, throwing it into the back of the van. I stood there in my undershirt, letting the freezing wind hit my skin, trying to wash away the feeling of helplessness. I pulled out the phone and called Joe. Did you get the feed? I asked. I got it, Joe said. His voice was grim. We have the coercion. We have the admission of financial fraud. We have the threat of illegal commitment. It is all there, Bill. It is a slam dunk. And the signature. He has the document, Joe said. He will try to transfer the funds first thing in the morning. Let him try, I said. Freeze the account the second the transfer hits the pending queue. Flag it for fraud. And the mortgage, we own it. The paperwork is signed. You are the legal owner of the Vanderwood estate. Good. I looked up at the moon hanging over the city. Get the car ready, Joe. And call the sheriff, not the local police. The county sheriff. Tell him we have a felony eviction to execute at 900 hours. You are going to evict them, no? I said, climbing into the driver's seat. I am not just going to evict them. I am going to erase them. I drove away from the hospital. The janitor was gone. The father was gone. There was only the executioner left, and he had a very busy morning ahead of him. The champagne was flowing like water at the Regency Hotel ballroom. It was $2,500 a bottle, a vintage that tasted like liquid gold poured by waiters in white gloves who moved like ghosts through the crowd of Chicago's elite. I watched it all on the tablet screen in the back of my car, the high-definition feed streaming from the hotel's security system. My team had hacked into it 10 minutes ago. It is amazing what you can see when you own the mortgage on the building where the party is being held. Patricia Vanderwood stood in the center of the room, basking in the glow of the crystal chandeliers. She had made a miraculous recovery from the trembling, broken woman I had seen at the bank just hours earlier. The fear was gone, scrubbed away, and replaced by a layer of foundation and arrogance so thick it looked like armor. She wore a crimson gown that looked like it had been dipped in blood, her neck draped in diamonds that she had likely pulled out of a safe deposit box the moment Justin told her the money was coming. She was laughing, her head thrown back, a sound that grated on my nerves like metal on bone. She held court with a circle of women who nodded at her every word, eager to be close to the woman who had just pulled off the financial coup of the century. I turned up the volume on the tablet. The microphone above the bar picked up her voice clearly. It was a nightmare, simply a nightmare, Patricia was saying, gesturing with her flute of champagne. That man, that mechanic, he is completely unhinged. He tried to break down our front door with a tire iron. Can you imagine? We had to call the SWAT team just to subdue him. The women gasped in performed horror. One of them, a woman with too much surgery and too little empathy, touched Patricia's arm. You poor dear. And Sarah? How is she handling her father being a criminal? Patricia sighed a dramatic, tragic sound. We are doing our best to protect her. But you know how it is. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She has always been fragile. And with a father like that, well, genetics are a powerful thing. We are just grateful Justin is strong enough to handle both of them. He is a saint, truly. I clenched my jaw watching the pixels on the screen. She was rewriting history in real time. She was turning her cruelty into charity. She was painting my daughter as a burden, and me as a monster, all while drinking wine that technically belonged to me. The camera panned to the other side of the room. Justin was holding court near the orchestra. He looked manic. His eyes were bright, feverish, darting around the room as if he expected someone to challenge him. But no one did. They were all patting him on the back, shaking his hand, congratulating him on the acquisition. 20 million, Justin was saying, his voice loud enough to carry over the music. All cash. They saw the value in the tech immediately. Aerotech isn't just a company, gentlemen. It is a paradigm shift. Phoenix Holdings begged me to sell. They practically threw money at me. He took a large swig of his drink, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked like a man who had just cheated death and convinced himself it was skill. A heavy-set man in a tuxedo, one of the investors Justin had scammed, clapped him on the shoulder. I admit, Justin, I was worried there for a minute. The dividends were late. But this buyout. This makes everyone whole and then some. You really pulled it off. Justin puffed out his chest. I told you, Frank. You just have to have vision. Some people panic. Leaders execute. And now we are looking at expanding. Maybe buying a vacation home in the Hamptons. Sarah needs the sea air to recover from her episodes. The mention of Sarah made the investor chuckle. Your wife is a sweet girl, Justin, but her family. That father of hers showed up at the club last month looking like he cleans pools for a living. Justin laughed. A cruel, sharp bark. Don't worry about Bill, he is gone. Restraining order. He is probably back in his trailer park right now crying into a light beer. The man is a dinosaur. He doesn't understand how the world works. He thinks hard work matters. He doesn't get that in this world the guys with the smartest lawyers win. I watched him raise his glass. To the winners, Justin shouted. To the winners, the crowd echoed. They drank. They smiled. They felt safe. They were wrapped in the warm, fuzzy blanket of their own delusion. They thought the storm had passed. They didn't realize they were standing in the eye of a hurricane. I looked out the window of the limousine. We were 2 blocks away from the hotel. The city lights blurred past streaks of gold and red in the darkness. I adjusted my cufflinks. I checked the knot of my tie in the reflection of the glass. The man staring back at me wasn't Bill. He wasn't a mechanic. He was a shark that had smelled blood in the water. I tapped the driver's partition. Pull up to the main entrance, I said, and call the security detail. Tell them to block the exits. No one leaves that ballroom until I say they leave. Yes, Mr. Chairman. I looked back at the screen one last time. Justin was kissing his mother on the cheek. They were whispering something to each other, probably planning their next vacation, or perhaps discussing which psychiatric facility would be cheapest for Sarah. They looked so happy, so secure. Enjoy it, I whispered to the screen. Enjoy that champagne. It is the last expensive thing you will ever taste. The car slowed down. The doorman rushed forward to open the door. I stepped out onto the red carpet. The air was cold, but I felt nothing but heat. I buttoned my jacket. I walked through the revolving doors, my team of lawyers flanking me like a pack of wolves. The music from the ballroom drifted down to the lobby. It was a waltz, appropriate. They were dancing on the edge of a cliff, and I was about to push them off. I walked toward the elevators. The staff tried to stop me, asking for an invitation. One look from Joe Moretti and they stepped back. We didn't need invitations. We owned the building. As the elevator doors closed, cutting off the noise of the lobby, I closed my eyes and pictured Sarah's face. I pictured the fear in her eyes when she signed that paper. I pictured the bruise on her arm. I am coming, baby, I thought, and I am bringing the thunder. The elevator dinged, the doors opened, the music was loud now, the laughter was deafening. I stepped out into the corridor. The double doors to the ballroom were closed. 2 security guards stood there. They saw me. They saw the look in my eyes. They stepped aside without a word. I reached out and placed both hands on the heavy oak doors. I didn't push them yet. I waited for a lull in the music. I waited for the silence between the beats. And then I threw them open. The heavy oak doors of the ballroom didn't just open. They swung apart with a resonant thud that cut through the ambient noise of the party like a gavel striking a judge's bench. The sound was authoritative, final, and impossible to ignore. The string quartet, seasoned professionals who had played through drunken toasts and awkward speeches, faltered. The violinist missed a beat. The cellist lowered his bow, and a silence descended upon the room that was heavier than the crystal chandeliers hanging above us. I stepped across the threshold. I wasn't wearing the grease-stained jumpsuit anymore. I wasn't wearing the flannel shirt or the worn-out work boots that Justin had mocked for 10 years. I was wearing a charcoal gray 3-piece suit cut from Tasmanian wool by a master tailor in Milan who flew to New York just to take my measurements. It was the kind of suit that didn't just fit, it armored you. It absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. My shirt was crisp white starch against the dark fabric, and my tie was a deep blood-red silk. On my wrist, the Patek Philippe watch, that cost more than Justin's entire fraudulent startup, ticked silently, a mechanical heartbeat of immense wealth. I walked into the room. I didn't rush. I moved with the slow, predatory grace of a man who owns the ground he walks on. The click of my Italian leather shoes on the marble floor echoed in the silence, a rhythmic, terrifying sound. Click, click, click. The reaction of the room was a wave of physical force. At first, there was confusion. The guests, the elite of Chicago, squinted at me. They saw an older man, distinguished, powerful, radiating an aura of command that made their own wealth feel like pocket change. They didn't recognize Bill the mechanic. They saw a titan. I saw a banker I had destroyed in a merger 5 years ago standing near the buffet. He dropped his fork. It clattered onto his plate, a sharp, jarring noise. His mouth fell open. He grabbed his wife's arm, pulling her back, his eyes wide with a mixture of recognition and pure terror. He knew that the man walking toward the stage wasn't a guest. He was an executioner. The crowd parted. It wasn't a conscious decision on their part. It was instinct. It was the way a herd of gazelles separates when a lion walks through the tall grass. Women in $5,000 gowns stepped back, clutching their pearls, sensing the danger rolling off me in waves. Men who had spent the evening boasting about their portfolios suddenly found their shoes very interesting, avoiding eye contact, terrified that looking at me might turn them to stone. I kept my eyes locked on the stage. Justin and Patricia were still standing there, frozen in a tableau of arrogance. Patricia was the first to realize something was wrong. She wasn't looking at my face. She was looking at the cut of my jacket. She was looking at the way the light caught the platinum cufflinks. She was a woman who worshipped money, and she recognized the high altar when she saw it. The color drained from her face so fast, she looked like a corpse painted with rouge. She gripped Justin's arm, her fingernails digging into his sleeve. But Justin. Justin was drunk. He was drunk on champagne, drunk on victory, and drunk on his own stupidity. He blinked against the spotlight, swaying slightly. He looked at me and his brain refused to process the visual information. He didn't see the Brioni suit. He didn't see the power. He only saw the face of the man he hated. He laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound that broke the tension in the room for a split second. He pulled his arm away from his mother and stepped to the edge of the stage, grinning like a jackal. "Well, look who decided to crash the party," Justin shouted into the microphone. His voice boomed through the speakers, distorted and slurred. The crowd didn't laugh with him this time. They shifted uncomfortably. They looked from him to me, sensing the disparity in power, terrified of being on the wrong side of history. "Ladies and gentlemen," Justin continued, gesturing at me with his empty glass. "Look at this. My father-in-law, the mechanic, rented a tuxedo. What is the matter, Bill? Did you come to fix the toilet? Is the plumbing backed up?" He waited for the applause. He waited for the mockery. But there was only silence. A cold, suffocating silence. Justin's smile faltered. He looked around the room, confused by the lack of support. He turned back to me, his eyes narrowing. "Get out!" he hissed, abandoning the microphone. "You are embarrassing yourself. You look ridiculous. Who did you steal that suit from? A dead man. I didn't stop walking. I was 10 feet away from the stage now. I could smell the fear coming off Patricia. It smelled like sour wine." "Security!" Justin screamed, his voice cracking. "Where is the security? I want this trash thrown out. I want him thrown in the snow." 2 large men in black suits stepped out from the shadows near the stage. They were the head of hotel security and his deputy. Justin pointed at me, his finger shaking. "Grab him." "What are you waiting for? I pay your salaries. Get him out of here." The security guards moved. They walked past me. They didn't even look at me. They walked straight to the stage and stood in front of Justin, crossing their arms. "What are you doing?" Justin shrieked, backing up until he bumped into his mother. "I said throw him out." The head of security, a man named Marcus, who I had hired 3 years ago to oversee my personal detail before placing him at this hotel, looked up at Justin with a face made of stone. "Mr. O'Connor owns the building, sir," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "We don't throw out the owner." Justin froze. His mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. "Owner," he whispered. I stopped at the base of the stairs leading up to the stage. I looked up at him. For the first time all night I spoke. My voice wasn't loud, but it resonated off the walls, deep and calm and terrifying. "I don't just own the building, Justin. I own the mortgage on your house. I own the debt on your company. I own the chair you are standing on. I took the first step up the stairs, and I am here to collect." I stepped onto the stage. The wooden floorboards didn't creak under my weight. Even the building seemed to recognize its master. Justin stood there, his mouth opening and closing, his face a mask of drunken confusion and dawning horror. He looked at the security guards who had refused his orders. Then he looked at me, and for the first time he saw the predator behind the prey. I reached out and took the microphone from his hand. He didn't fight me. He let it go as if it were burning his skin. I didn't shout. I didn't raise my voice. I simply tapped the metal mesh twice. Thump, thump. The sound echoed through the ballroom, silencing the last few whispers in the back of the room. I looked out at the sea of faces. These were the captains of industry, the socialites, the people who thought power was measured by the label on your jacket. They were staring at me with a mixture of fear and fascination. They knew something historic was happening, even if they didn't quite understand the mechanics of it yet. "You all know me as Bill," I said. My voice was calm, resonant, filling the space with an authority that Justin could never buy. "You know me as the mechanic who fixes your transmissions. You know me as the man who isn't welcome in this ballroom because his hands are dirty. And you are right. My hands are dirty." I turned slowly to face Justin. He was backing away, bumping into the drum set. But my hands are dirty because I built things, Justin. I built an empire from the ground up while you were learning how to tie a Windsor knot. You asked who I am. You asked who bought your debt. You asked who owns the chair you are standing on. I signaled to the technician in the sound booth. My team had already commandeered the control room. Allow me to introduce myself properly, I said. I am William J. O'Connor, founder and majority shareholder of O'Connor Global Logistics, and I am the sole proprietor of Phoenix Holdings. A gasp went through the room. It started in the front row and rippled back like a shockwave. Phoenix Holdings was the whale that everyone in that room wanted to do business with. It was the invisible hand that moved markets, and the man standing on stage in a Brioni suit had just admitted he was the wizard behind the curtain. Justin's knees gave out. He grabbed the cymbal stand to keep from falling. No, he whispered. That is impossible. You are a nobody. I ignored him. I looked at the massive projection screen behind the band. You were celebrating a sale tonight, Justin. You told these good people that you sold your company Aerotech Solutions to Phoenix Holdings for $20 million. You told them you were a genius. You told them you were the future. I walked closer to him. But you forgot the first rule of business. Always read the contract, especially the clauses regarding fraud, embezzlement, and moral turpitude. I nodded to the booth. Play it. The screen flickered to life. The high-definition footage from the hidden camera in the hospital room illuminated the ballroom with a harsh, cold light. The audio was crystal clear, amplified by the concert speakers. The room watched in stunned silence as the video played. They saw Justin standing over Sarah's hospital bed. They saw the cast on her arm. They heard his voice, cruel and venomous. If you keep telling people I hurt you, they are going to think you are insane. They are going to lock you up in a padded room. The crowd recoiled. A woman in the front row covered her mouth with her hand. The video continued. This is an emergency. Sign it, just make a mark. They watched him force the pen into her injured hand. They watched him squeeze her fingers until she cried out in pain. They watched him smile when he got the signature, a smile of pure, unadulterated malice. And then the confession. I need to pay off the most aggressive investors before they go to the FBI. I signaled for the video to stop. The freeze frame on the screen was Justin's face, twisted in greed, holding the stolen document. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. I turned back to the crowd. That is the man you were toasting, I said quietly. A man who beats his wife. A man who blackmails a hospitalized woman. A man who admits on tape that his business is a Ponzi scheme designed to defraud you. I turned to Justin. He was shaking violently now, tears streaming down his face, his arrogance stripped away, leaving only a terrified child. You signed a contract with Phoenix Holdings this afternoon, Justin. You sold your company. But Clause 14, Section B of that contract states that if the seller is found to have engaged in criminal activity or provided false financial data, the purchase price is subject to an adjustment based on the liability incurred. I pulled a folded document from my inside pocket. I am invoking that clause now. Your company Aerotech is built on stolen funds. It has zero assets and millions in liabilities. Therefore, the adjusted purchase price is $0. I let the paper fall from my hand. It drifted to the floor, landing at his feet. You get nothing, Justin. The $20 million you thought was coming. It doesn't exist. But the contract is still valid. You sold me the company, which means I now own your assets. I own your intellectual property, and I own the liability of your confession. Patricia screamed. It was a shrill, broken sound from the side of the stage. You can't do this. We have rights. We have status. I looked at her. You have nothing, Patricia. I bought the mortgage on your house this morning, since you are in default and since the primary earner just admitted to fraud on camera. I am accelerating the loan. The full 15 million is due right now. Can you pay it? She stared at me, her mouth agape, her eyes wide with panic. I didn't think so, I said. Which means the foreclosure process begins immediately. My team is changing the locks as we speak. I looked back at the crowd. This party is over. But before you leave, I suggest you check your portfolios. If you invested in Aerotech, your money is gone. Justin spent it on cars, vacations, and the champagne you are drinking right now. The mood in the room shifted instantly from shock to fury. The investors, the men who had slapped Justin on the back minutes ago, began to surge forward. Their faces were red with rage. They weren't looking at me anymore. They were looking at the man who had stolen their money. Justin looked at the angry mob approaching the stage. He looked for an exit, but the security guards blocked the stairs. He was trapped. Please, Justin begged, looking at me. Bill, Dad, please help me. They are going to kill me. I looked at him with zero emotion. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just the cold satisfaction of a job finished. I am not your dad, Justin. I am just the mechanic, and I don't fix things that are broken beyond repair. I scrapped them. I turned my back on him. I walked down the stairs, the crowd parting for me with reverence. Behind me, the shouting began. I heard Justin screaming for his mother. I heard the crash of a table being overturned. I didn't look back. I adjusted my cuffs. I checked my watch. The police would be here in 3 minutes. Just enough time for the investors to explain their grievances to Justin personally. I walked toward the exit, my footsteps steady and sure. The execution was complete. The tycoon had spoken, and the silence that followed would be the sweetest sound I had ever heard. The sirens did not wail. They chirped once, a short, sharp sound that cut through the chaos of the ballroom like a knife. The double doors swung open again, but this time it wasn't a tuxedo-clad billionaire who walked through. It was the county sheriff and 4 deputies, their faces grim, their hands resting on their holsters. They moved through the crowd of angry investors with the efficiency of a riot squad. The sea of tuxedos and evening gowns parted for them, not out of respect, but out of the primal instinct to avoid the contagion of the law. Justin saw them coming. He stopped screaming. He stopped begging. He shrank back against the velvet curtain of the stage, looking for a trapdoor that didn't exist. He looked small. Without his money, without his lies, without the adoration of the crowd, he was just a terrified boy in a rented suit. Justin Vanderwood. The sheriff boomed his voice, carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. You are under arrest for securities fraud, embezzlement, and elder abuse. Justin tried to run. It was a pathetic, instinctive lunge toward the side exit, but he didn't make it 2 steps. 2 deputies grabbed him. They didn't handle him gently. They slammed him against the wall, his face pressing into the expensive wallpaper. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest sound in the room. Click, click, click. It was the sound of a life ending. I demand a lawyer, Justin sobbed, snot running down his face, ruining his silk lapel. You can't do this. My mother knows the governor. The sheriff spun him around. He looked Justin in the eye with pure disgust. Your mother isn't going to help you, son. She has her own problems. They dragged him out. They didn't walk him. They dragged him. His feet scrambled on the marble floor, his shoes squeaking like a dying animal. As they passed me, Justin looked up. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, filled with a terror so raw it was almost hard to look at. Dad, he whispered. Please. I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I took a sip of water from a glass a waiter had left on a nearby table. I watched him disappear through the doors, followed by the jeers of the people he had stolen from. The investors didn't attack him. They didn't need to. The image of him in cuffs, weeping like a child, was a vengeance sweeter than violence. I checked my watch. 9:15. The party was over, but the eviction was just beginning. I signaled to Joe, "Get the car. We are going to the house. The drive to the Vanderwood estate was silent. The snow had stopped falling, leaving the world covered in a pristine white blanket. It looked peaceful. It looked pure. But I knew that inside that massive colonial mansion, panic was setting in. When we pulled into the driveway, the scene was already chaotic. A moving truck was idling near the garage, its exhaust puffing gray clouds into the night air. But it wasn't there to move furniture. It was there to clear out debris. 2 locksmiths were already at the front door, the sound of their drills whining in the cold air. They were drilling out the core of the lock that I had kicked in just 24 hours ago. I stepped out of the car. The cold air felt good. It felt like cleansing. The front door was open. I walked in. Patricia was in the foyer. She was still wearing her red gala dress, but the hem was wet with snow and mud. She was frantic. She was running back and forth from the living room to the stairs, clutching a silver candelabra in one hand and a stack of paintings in the other. 2 large suitcases lay open on the floor, overflowing with fur coats and designer shoes. "You can't do this," she shrieked when she saw me. She dropped the candelabra. It hit the floor with a heavy clang. "This is my home. I have rights. You have to give me 30 days. It is the law." I walked over to the fireplace. I looked at the portrait of her late husband hanging above the mantel. He looked smug. I wondered what he would think of his wife now. "The law requires 30 days for tenants, Patricia," I said calmly, turning to face her. "But you aren't a tenant. You are a squatter. The foreclosure was executed at 5 p.m. today. The deed is in my name. And since you have no lease, you are trespassing." I pointed to the deputies standing by the door. "I am being generous. I am giving you 10 minutes to pack your personal effects, clothes and toiletries only. Everything else, the furniture, the art, the silver, the jewelry, is collateral against the debt your son owes me." She lunged at me. She actually lunged at me. Her fingers curled into claws. "You thief! You dirty, low-class mechanic! I am Patricia Vanderwood. My family built this town. You are nothing. You are garbage." A deputy stepped in front of her, blocking her path. She bounced off his chest, stumbling back onto the pile of furs. She looked wild. Her hair was coming undone. Her makeup was smeared. The mask of high society had completely melted away, revealing the ugly, desperate creature underneath. She fell to her knees, sobbing. But it wasn't a cry of sorrow. It was a cry of rage. "Where am I supposed to go?" she wailed. "I have no money. Justin took everything. I can't live on the street. I am not like you people. I need things. I need my things." I walked over to her. I stood over her, looking down. I remembered how she had looked at me the night before. I remembered her blocking the door while my daughter bled in the bathroom. I remembered her calling me a nobody. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a card. It was a business card for a local shelter. "They have a bed open," I said, dropping the card onto the floor next to her. "It is clean. It is warm. And it is free. It is more than you offered my daughter last night." She looked at the card. She looked up at me, her eyes burning with hate. "You think you have won," she hissed. "You think because you have money now, you are better than us. You will never be one of us, Bill. You can buy the house, you can buy the bank, but you will always be a blue-collar grunt. You have no class." I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had just closed the final deal. I looked around the foyer. I looked at the gold leaf on the ceiling. I looked at the marble floors. And then I looked at the woman shivering in her stolen furs. "You are right, Patricia," I said softly. "I don't have your kind of class." I motioned to the deputies. "Take her out!" As they lifted her up, dragging her toward the door with her 2 suitcases, she started screaming again. But I didn't hear her. I was thinking about her insult. "Class," I said to her back as they pushed her out into the cold night. You said class is forever, Patricia, and you are right. She turned back one last time, framed by the darkness of the driveway. And your class, I said, my voice cutting through the wind, is on the street. The heavy oak door slammed shut. The lock clicked. The silence of the house returned. But this time it wasn't the silence of secrets and abuse. It was the silence of ownership. I took a deep breath. It smelled like dust and old money, but underneath that, I could smell something else. I could smell victory. The first thing Sarah noticed was the silence. It was not the heavy, suffocating silence of the Vanderwood estate where every quiet moment felt like a held breath before a scream. And it was not the sterile, beeping silence of the hospital room. This was a deep velvet silence. The kind of silence that only exists 40 stories above the noise of the world. She opened her eyes. The light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows was soft, filtered by sheer curtains that danced in the breeze of the central air conditioning. She was lying in a bed that felt like a cloud wrapped in sheets that smelled of lavender and safety. She tried to move her left arm and flinched, but the sharp agony was gone, replaced by a dull ache. She looked down. Her cast was resting on a silk pillow. She sat up slowly, the room spinning for a moment before steadying. This was not the cabin. This was not the small, drafty house where she had grown up, where the smell of motor oil and sawdust was permanently etched into the walls. This room was massive. Modern art hung on the walls. A fireplace flickered in the corner. Beyond the glass, the skyline of Chicago stretched out like a painting of steel and glass. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed. Her feet touched a rug that felt softer than her wedding dress. "Dad," she called out, her voice raspy from disuse. The door opened. I walked in. I had traded the Brioni suit for a cashmere cardigan and slacks. I held a tray with fresh coffee and toast. I looked at her, and the knot of tension that had been sitting in my chest for 48 hours finally loosened. "I am here, baby," I said, setting the tray down on the bedside table. Sarah looked at me. She looked at the room. She looked at the view. "Where are we?" she asked. Is this a hotel?" I said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "This is home." "Home." She frowned, confused. "But the cabin." "The cabin is real," I explained gently. "I love that cabin. But this is where I work. This is the headquarters of O'Connor Global Logistics. And this is the penthouse where I stay when I am not being Bill the mechanic." Sarah stared at me. Her eyes searched my face, looking for the father she knew in the features of the stranger sitting before her. "You are rich," she whispered. It wasn't an accusation. It was a realization. "I am wealthy," I corrected her. "There is a difference." Justin was rich. He had money, but the money owned him. Wealth is control. Wealth is freedom. Why, she asked, tears welling up in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me all those times I was struggling? All those times Justin made fun of you? Why did you let him?" I reached out and took her good hand. My palms were still calloused. No amount of money changes the hands of a man who started with a wrench. "Because I wanted you to know who you were before you knew what you had," I said. "I saw what money did to people, Sarah. I saw it turn good men into monsters. I wanted you to build your own character. I wanted you to find a strength that didn't come from a bank account." I looked down at her cast. "I waited too long," I admitted, my voice cracking slightly. "I thought I was protecting you from the vultures. I didn't realize I was leaving you alone in a cage with one." "I am sorry, Sarah. I should have ended it sooner." Sarah squeezed my hand. She looked at the cast, then at the city skyline. "He is gone," she asked. "Truly gone." "He is in a holding cell," I said. "And when he gets out, he will have nothing. No house, no company, no reputation. He is a ghost, Sarah, He can never hurt you again." She took a deep breath. She didn't cry. She nodded. It was a small movement, but it was firm. "Good," she said. The next few weeks were a blur of recovery. We didn't talk much about the past. We talked about the future. I brought the lawyers in. I brought the accountants in. But not to handle me, to handle Sarah. She didn't retreat into her trauma. She attacked it. She sat at the mahogany table in the dining room, her arm in a sling, reading the files on Phoenix Holdings. She read the acquisition papers for Aerotech. She read the foreclosure documents for the Vanderwood estate. One morning I came into the kitchen to find her dressed. She was wearing a blazer over her sling. Her hair was pulled back. She looked like her mother. "I want to see the warehouse," she said. I smiled. "You are supposed to be resting." "I have rested enough," she said. "You said this empire is mine one day. You said you built it for me. Well, I don't want to just inherit it. I want to earn it." We drove to the main distribution hub. I watched her walk the floor. I watched her talk to the shift managers. She didn't talk down to them. She asked questions. She listened. She had the mind of a data analyst and the heart of a mechanic's daughter. She stopped in front of a massive fleet of trucks, all emblazoned with the O'Connor logo. She touched the grill of one just like I used to do. "What are we going to do with Justin's company?" she asked. "I was going to dissolve it," I said. "It is worthless." "No," she said, turning to me. "The technology was fake, but the engineers he hired were real. They were good people who got scammed, too. We keep them. We pivot. We build something real out of his lie." I looked at her. The bruise on her cheek had faded. The fear in her eyes was gone, replaced by a fire that burned brighter than any blast furnace. "You are the boss," I said. She smiled. It was the first real smile I had seen in years. "I am not the boss," she said, linking her arm through mine. "I am the partner." We walked out of the warehouse together into the bright sunlight. The winter was over. The snow was melting. The nightmare of the Vanderwood family was just a footnote in a ledger that we had closed. I opened the car door for her. "Where to, Ms. O'Connor?" I asked. "To the office, Dad," she said. "We have work to do." As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw Bill the mechanic fading into the distance, but I didn't miss him. Because the man driving the car wasn't just a tycoon anymore. He was a father who had saved his daughter. And more importantly, he was a father who was watching his daughter save herself. The war was over. But the legacy was just beginning. This story is a brutal reminder that true power does not roar. It whispers. Justin and Patricia believed that expensive clothes and social status made them untouchable, but they lacked the one currency that actually matters: integrity. We often mistake silence for weakness and kindness for submission. But as Bill proved, the quietest man in the room is often the most dangerous. Never underestimate a person who has built their life with their own hands, and never forget that a parent's love is a force that can dismantle empires. Class isn't what you wear. It's how you treat those who can do nothing for you. If you believe that justice is best served, cold hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of ultimate redemption. And tell me in the comments below, have you ever had to hide your true strength to protect yourself from toxic people? I want to hear your story. See you in the next video.